from, their apartment or wherever who are trying to write about what's going on with sustainability where they live. So I think the combination in the past couple of years of people turning to blogging and then all these things that's become recent about climate change has really been driving this and the numbers that are getting to these sites much more. But I think each of these people have maybe a more interesting perspective about each of their sites and the field at large. So I'm going to let Aaron just kind of give a brief overview of Streets blog and start a little bit with the local focus and just how the Streets blog family has evolved and a little bit more about the site.
So sorry about the kid distraction. It was 0 for 5 on babysitters. That's never happened before, and my wife's out of town, so it's just, which also never happens. So there we are. Let's see. So Streets blog. How many people have seen or read or looked at Streets blog ever? Okay, so there's more people. You guys come out. So essentially, so we started Streets blog 2 years ago. And it's a website that basically covers what we call New York City's livable streets movement. And broadly sort of defined, that covers issues relevant to bicycling, pedestrian, users of mass transit, and public spaces, and kind of has an overall sort of urban environmental sort of area of interest. We sort of stay away from the subway. That's kind of we feel like that was covered by other media somewhat recently, but not that great. But we sort of, a lot of the premise of the blog is that we don't use New York City's street space very efficiently or sensibly as currently consumed. In a lot of ways, in New York City, in any big city, space is the most valuable and precious, one of the most valuable precious commodities we have. And yet, we sort of look outside at our public space, all the space between the buildings, and what we've really done is we've allocated most of that space for the storage and movement of motor vehicles, which, again, in a dense, highly populated city, motor vehicles certainly have their place, but they're also in many ways the least efficient. The motorist is in many ways the least efficient, least sort of environmentally sound user of space. So the blog actually started in a kind of funny way, and I'll tell that and sort of like open it up for questions for the rest of the speakers. But it was about 2 years ago, and I was working on a freelance story for New York Magazine, because that was my background in journalism. And it was a story about how Mayor Bloomberg was going to all these sort of powers that be were pushing for congestion pricing in New York City. The Mayor Bloomberg's second term. And nobody really knew about that. He really didn't want to talk about it. But I had a lot of good info on it. So it was going to be a cover story for New York Magazine. And I started working on it. And pretty much every couple of days, you're like, I was trying to come up for a lead for congestion pricing. It's sort of, it's a very wonky and potentially boring issue. And so, these issues would come up where, illegal police department parking in Chinatown, or guys selling water on Flatbush Avenue. And I don't know, there were just all these different selling water in the traffic. I don't know if you've ever seen those guys walking through the traffic. I was like, they're already making money off of congestion. And I thought, that could be a great lead for this story. It's basically just a journalist looking for, a lead for this, or a hook for the story. And literally, like every couple days, like a new thing would come up, and it was a thing that generally wasn't being covered in other media, and that really made me and some other folks realize, like, that this kind of set of issues, sort of urban transportation with a kind of focus on sustainability, and sort of an orientation about what other cities are doing around the world. That's a real beat. It's like a journalistic beat that you just don't see the New York Times covering fights about local bike lanes very often, or until finally the sustainability plan came along, you didn't even see all that much about how sort of how our streets and our transportation systems relate to climate change and contribute to it. So we decided to guy who was one of the interview subjects I had. He was another potential book for the story. He flung himself out of the window yet? Okay. And a guy named Mark Gordon, who's a hedge fund guy, Lower Manhattan, young, very wealthy. He was potentially a really interesting sort of figure to build this suggestion pricing story around, because he was just starting to fund a lot of different projects, like transportation alternatives, tri-state transportation campaign, and things in his neighborhood. And I just went to Mark after I had done this lengthy set of interviews with him, and I was like, I just, why don't we make a blog out of this? This set of topics is a blog, and he was like, oh yeah, I've been wanting to do that for ages. It's always got to be Mark's idea. That's the trick with funders. Okay, I mean, he had been, that's a joke, come on. Don't tell Mark I said that. But Mark had an organization called the Open Planning Project that sort of dedicated to creating software that enhances civic engagement through web-based open source software. It really fit in nicely with Open Planning's mission. And it was basically one of those sort of like, okay, how much do you need to get going? And we got going. And the blog's been around for 2 years. It's had some good success. And one of the goals, for example, was sort of helping to create transformation in the Department of Transportation. And we certainly can't claim, credit for that, because a lot of people wanted that to happen. But, in the last year, New York City's DOT has just completely shifted, its focus from kind of pushing cars through the street grid to really kind of like helping facilitate much more efficient modes of transport, bicycling, buses. I mean, DOT never even used to talk to transit. And now it's like, the new commissioner, this incredible woman named Jeanette Sadiq-Khan, she's working with Howard Roberts at MTA all the time on bus stuff. There's a lot of questions with financing these days, but there has been a pretty significant change, at least in the policy realm, and the change is starting to manifest on the ground in a lot of ways. So we're covering that, we're sort of like helping to contribute to it. It's always a sticky line between sort of like advocacy and the journalism, and I don't think I figured that out 100% yet, but that's the basic story, I think.
Great.
Yeah.
You can have some burning questions you can ask her now, otherwise.
Yeah, I might end up, but this might not last long, so I'll try to hang out for a while. So.
Okay. So next up, let's let Jill give a little bit of multimedia overview of her site. How many of you have been on a haiku before? I highly encourage you to check it out. When I was at worldchanging.com, it's actually one of Alex Stephan's favorite sites in the city. Different sites is their favorite sites.
So what brought everyone out tonight, by the way, I'm just curious. Are there a lot of bloggers in the audience, journalists?
I'm here for Ryan from Line from Ryan,
Okay.
and I'm one for her, the designer. I'm just trying to increase her, online image and just trying to get good with that.
Yeah, I'm here with West Harlem Environmental Action, and we recently launched a new website. One piece of that is a blog, and we're trying to get our started at downtown.
So it sounds like there are actually a significant number of bloggers. Could you like to show of hands who's a blogger? Okay.
And it's okay if you're not.
Not yet.
So I'm actually going to sit down. I don't mind. I just want to make sure you can hear me okay if I do. Can you hear me okay if I'm sitting here? Yeah. Okay. Just make sure. So Habitat is a blog dedicated to sustainable design. So I founded it in 2005. It's not just about sustainability in general, and it's also a design blog. It's kind of the intersection of the two, focused on innovation and emerging technology. I'm just going to kind of go really quickly through some stories that we covered this week. I feel like that can give you like an overview of the type of things that we write about. So we do interior design products. We wrote about this birdhouse recycling catalogs. read about transportation. We also read a lot about architecture, and that's kind of the bread and butter. So that's how I got started. And that was my initial interest in the environment. We read about fashion. It's not something that we talk about very much initially, but fashion is clearly a huge part of design and touches all of our lives. It's something that we've been writing about more and more as we get more interested in. Clean tech and humanitarian design, issues around energy as well. Some other things we've covered in the past, we tend to focus on a lot of like imagery, materials, alternative energy. We do a lot of stories about solar, kinetic, and various emerging technologies for renewable energy, lighting, recycling design. We focus a lot on architecture and also products and stuff made from recycled components. The idea of
Can you speak up?
yeah. Compact living, motion design. And essentially, my background, the reason that I started this is because I'm a designer by training. I was actually originally a graphic designer and started working with furniture design and started getting more and more into spatial design and decided to go back to architecture school to study architecture. And I was really sort of, the more I learned about design, the more I was starting to realize what a huge impact not only architecture and the built environment, but even smaller product design has on our environment. So for example, I like to focus a lot, but buildings use 40% of the world's energy and generate sort of all carbon dioxide emissions. 40% of landfill comes from construction. I started thinking about that and really realizing like there's such a huge power that design has to shape our world for the better. And instead, I don't really see it being utilized in the way that it should be. And the time during the time of kind of the late 90s and beginning of this decade that I was doing furniture design and stuff, what was really being sort of discussed as some great design from Grand Army, and it's like really sort of like sleek but very, very superficial types of design that I thought just kind of seemed a bit pointless. And then whenever people talk about sustainability, it was always just sort of like the opposite end of the scale, like this very hippie aesthetic, kind of going back to nature, just not really future forward design, but more very much kind of about doing the craft. So my whole premise was, good design can also be about sustainability and stuff that's futuristic. And the future is thinking about the environment, thinking about how our lives can be made better. And I didn't realize the PowerPoint was actually part of that. Throwing me off of it. But essentially, I thought the two worlds converge. That looking at the future and looking at sustainability doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have to go back to our buttons. And that's what I wanted to write about with the habitat. So I started architecture school around the same time that I started writing in habitat. And at this point, we have the site really grew very quickly. I started taking on 11 down. And we have about 20 freelance writers on staff. We have thousands of posts that we've written in the course of the last 2 years. I started in 2005. I've written over 600 articles myself on the site. We're getting around 1 million visitors a month to the site. And I think the thing that I'll sort of end on is what I think is really interesting about blogging as opposed to other types of media is the interactive component to it. So as it could or should be yet. Some of the discussions that happen in the comments get really pretty stupid pretty quickly. Like, yeah, people just calling and saying it's ugly, but no, it's not, you suck, you know, that kind of thing. But I think the potential is there for really true dialogue. We do get really thoughtful dialogue sparking the site all the time. We've had a ton of posts. This one in particular, I think, has 86 comments or something. We've had posts that have gotten up over 100 comments. People just have this ongoing conversation with them for like months and months after the original post. So we're actually trying to expand the interactive capability of the site by doing things like, let's see, we have a submit story feature where we're providing writers to just submit stories to us. It's a little bit of an experiment, like it's not, it's working, it's quite weird. In the sense that people send us stuff all the time, they don't really write stories, they'll just send a picture, this is cool, check it out, or, you know, it'll be like a press release. So right now, we're hoping people would just post stuff on the site. It still has to kind of go through this filter, but I think it's interesting, and I think probably all of us who are blogging are actually experimenting and figuring out how this, you know, how this features. So that's it. That's my spiel.
What's your goal with that experiment?
Just to, you know, improve on the site, improve on the dialogue, see what happens. I think.
It's cool.
Anyway, I can answer questions now, but maybe we should get into it and so that I don't know.
Yeah, no, I want to get into that way as well. We are still here. So, I love looking at all this